All right, everybody, welcome back to Sports and Money with Ben Parker. Thank you so much for being with us. Today, we're looking at the Jimmy Garoppolo contract for the 49ers. Last week, he hit the jackpot. He has a mammoth 5-year deal for $137.5 million. It is a massive deal, a mammoth investment by the 49ers into their newly traded for quarterback. I want to briefly go through the contract and then get into why I actually like this deal for the 49ers at this particular time. So let's go through it really quick. First of all, 2018, it's going to be $37 million. Let me say that again. $37 million is the cap hit for next year for Jimmy Garoppolo. This is an almost unheard of cap number to start off the contract with, but $37 million will be the cap number for next season. Needless to say, this will severely handicap the 49ers next year. The following year, though, it levels off. You're looking at it going back down to $20 million in 2019. That would be Garoppolo's second year under this contract. Now, for the final 3 years of the contract, it levels off in flat lines. You've got $26.5 million, $27 million for each of those last 3 seasons. So even though it's a massive number the first year and plummets down to a still very stout $20 million the second season, when you get to that $27 million mark, who knows what the quarterback contracts are going to look like 2 seasons from now. We already know some other quarterbacks are making just about that same amount of money. By the time we have 2 more off seasons worth of quarterback signings, this $27 million mark may not be that stout as it appears to be right now at this time. Only time will tell. We don't know exactly how the free agent market will roll or how the quarterbacks will play it as far as signing back with their own teams or moving over to other teams. But $37 million, ridiculously high cap number for this year, drops to 20. Then the cap hit for those final 3 seasons is $26.5, $27 million. Now, I want to switch over to the red here. This is the dead cap. And this is where it really gets interesting to me, and I'll get into this later about why I think this is actually a good thing. But if the 49ers were all of a sudden say, hey, we want out of this deal right now, release Garoppolo, which they won't, but if they were to release Jimmy Garoppolo right now, their dead cap space would be $48.7 million. That is, they would still have to take $48.7 million off of their salary cap, even if Jimmy Garoppolo was no longer with the 49ers. Now, of course, we know that's not going to happen, but that's the way they've got it staggered here. It's a bit of a front-loaded contract. Not completely, but a little bit. And by that I mean, you've got this massive number at the start. Now, you remember 15 years ago, when they came up with the new salary cap numbers, and the Patriots were the first to master this, you had a lot of teams who were backloading the contracts. So in the first 3 seasons, they had a very small or manageable cap number. In seasons 4 and 5, you would have these massive cap numbers, and very often the players wouldn't even get through that contract because they were so backloaded. Some teams today, not everybody, some teams and some players have actually front-loaded these contracts to get over that hump. So in the second season, in the 2019 offseason, if the 49ers were to let Jimmy Garoppolo go at that point, just cut him, release him, trade him, whatever, the dead cap would be $13 million coming off. Even if he's not on the team, he's still going to count $13 million against the cap for 2019. Now, all you would be saving, and this is really where the contracts get interesting. This is where I love to look at contracts. All you would be saving if you released Jimmy Garoppolo in the 2019 offseason would be $7 million. That's $20 million that you would be paying him versus the $13 million that you would still have to pay him even if he wasn't on the team. So all you're saving is $7 million. Good luck finding a quarterback at that price. Now, the third year is where it really gets fascinating. I like to call this the tilt. You could call it the unbalancing. There's a lot of different names you could give it to it, a seesaw effect, if you will. It's where everything shifts, the money shifts. Right here in this third season, the 2020 off season, if for whatever reason the 49ers were ready to let go of Jimmy Garoppolo by trade or by release, his cap number would have been $26.6 million. To let him go, and he's no longer on the team, by whatever means, the cap hit would only be $4.2 million. So at that point, and that's what I like to call the tilt. At that point, you've got this massive cap number of $26.5 million versus what it would cost if he wasn't there anymore, and that's $4.2 million. So you certainly wouldn't do it the first year. You'd actually be losing money. The second year, you'd only be saving $7 million. The third year, and this is the important number to remember, if you wanted to let him go through whatever means you chose, you would actually be saving $22 million against the cap that season. And of course, that is a ton of savings. You could buy almost any quarterback you wanted to at that point, or use that money for other places on the roster. Now, let me look at the guarantees, and then we'll look into why I like this contract. $48.7 million is the guarantee for Jimmy Garoppolo. No matter what happens, injury, trade, release, Jimmy Garoppolo is guaranteed $48.7 million. Listen, that's quite a guarantee for a guy who's played such a limited number of games in the NFL. Just a very sparse few appearances with the Patriots. Only those last 5 or so games for the 49ers last year. He won them all, but still an extremely small sample size for a quarterback to be getting this kind of money. It's an incredible amount of money. The guarantee is a very large guarantee. NFL contracts, as some of you know, some of you may not, NFL contracts are not necessarily guaranteed. It's negotiated. Each player's contract is different. Jimmy Garoppolo, no matter what happens to him, if he gets injured tomorrow, is guaranteed $48.7 million, even if he never plays another snap for the 49ers. So this is a tremendous deal for Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's really hit the jackpot. Of course, the 49ers are banking on the fact that he's going to be worth it. Now, before I move off this guarantee, there are actually a lot more guarantees built into this contract. The guarantees only get higher the longer he stays. There are some other guarantees that kick in. I'm not going to get into those, but I do want to let you know that there are more guarantees involved than just this $48.7 million. But even if he were to get injured right now and they're putting another down in the NFL at all, he would still be making $48.7 million, and the 49ers would be on the hook for that, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with contracts, that $48.7 million is the same thing that the dead cap would be. Now, I know that's a lot of numbers, so let's close out some of the numbers and get on to some of the case study here and the opinionating that I have to offer on this. Why do I like the deal? I really have 2 reasons why I like this deal for the 49ers. Number one, signing Jimmy Garoppolo, even though it's a massive amount of money, signing Jimmy Garoppolo gives you something that you haven't had in 3 or 4 seasons as a franchise, and that is some hope. That is some actual good news. Ever since the end of that Super Bowl with the Ravens that the 49ers lost, it has been all downhill. This has been the quickest we've ever seen a talented roster come apart at the seams. There has been a variety of forces that have ripped apart an extremely talented 49ers roster. I thought about 6 seasons ago, that the 49ers and the Seahawks were pretty much tied for the best and most talented rosters in the NFL. That's up for debate, obviously, but needless to say, incredibly talented all over the field. They had everything rolling, and then all of a sudden you have a roster that's ripped apart by retirements, controversy. The retirements were early retirements. You have folks getting injured. Just quite a number of things that you didn't expect to happen to the roster have happened to the roster. Jim Harbaugh, the coach, and the front office have a massive falling out. Jim Harbaugh is out. The front office has some shakeups as well. Even the new stadium that has been built has had some problems with it, some complaints about heat and sun angles and things of that nature. It's been a rough 4 seasons or so for the 49ers. You haven't really had a whole lot of hope, a lot of good bright spots. Signing Jimmy Garoppolo gives you something that you haven't had for 4 seasons or so, and something that quite a few other franchises still don't have, and that is hope. You have in Jimmy Garoppolo a chance at least at winning some games, at winning a lot of games, at bringing the fan base back into that brand spanking new stadium, and maybe even ultimately competing for a Super Bowl. Now, the second reason I like this contract, and this is the massive reason, this is the really big reason that I like this contract, and the reason that Kyle Shanahan and Lynch, the GM, and everybody else, I think, should like this contract as well, is that if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, let's say after 2 seasons, and 2 seasons is the benchmark really here, after 2 seasons, if the Jimmy Garoppolo thing just hasn't worked out, he just wasn't what we all expected him to be, he wasn't what he showed in the last 5 games of this past season, he wasn't what we got a glimpse of with the Patriots, if for whatever reason, perhaps injury, some kind of a lack of motivation now because of the new contract, or maybe NFL defenses just simply catch up to Jimmy Garoppolo and figure out what he can and can't do. That's happened before. If for whatever reason, after 2 seasons, Jimmy Garoppolo just didn't work out the way you wanted him to, you can let him go for $4.2 million. Now, is it a massive hit the first 2 seasons? It is. $37 million, $20 million, that's $57 million paid to Jimmy Garoppolo in 2 seasons, and that is going to extremely handicap your salary cap. But if you actually hit the jackpot with this guy, if he's actually as good as the 49ers seem to think that he is, and a lot of other people think that he is as well, then he could definitely be worth the money for this franchise at this time. There are other franchises that I wouldn't say this for because they've got other things going for them, but for the 49ers at this time, I think this is an experiment that you have to do. It's $37 million is a lot the first year. $20 million is still pretty stout the second year. But if after 2 seasons it goes horribly wrong or just doesn't work out, you can let him go. It can be a very short 2-year experiment. You're not tied to Jimmy Garoppolo for the entirety of the 5 seasons or even for 3 or 4 seasons. You're not setting the franchise back decades by investing in Jimmy Garoppolo. 2 seasons, and that's plenty long enough time to tell whether or not it's going to work out or not. 2 seasons, paying him a lot of money, trying to build a roster around him. Kyle Shanahan trying to build an offense around him. By the way, Kyle Shanahan really seems to have the magic touch right now, and this seems to rotate through different coaches at different times. Sometimes they just seem to be hitting the right buttons. Kyle Shanahan seems like he's got that right now, not only with the 49ers, but with the Falcons a couple of seasons ago. Seems like Kyle Shanahan has his hand on the right buttons at the moment. So I think it's a great fit for the 49ers, for Garoppolo, for Kyle Shanahan. And listen, if you traded for the guy and you've already watched this guy play for you and you did nothing but win the last part of the season, you got to give him the money. By the way, this is just a brief aside. I really think this is what the Redskins, Washington, should have done with Kirk Cousins. Instead of putting Cousins on the franchise tag the past 2 seasons, paying him a ton of money, trying to make up your mind while paying him a ton of money, hamstringing the rest of the salary cap, not making any long-term commitment to the quarterback spot. I think Washington really hurt themselves. Is it that simple? Maybe not. Jay Gruden and Kirk Cousins never really seemed to hit it off together just right. We know there's not a whole lot of stability in the front office for the Washington Redskins. Having said all of that, I think Washington would have done much better 2 seasons ago to have either let Kirk Cousins go or sign him to exactly this kind of contract. Even if they didn't want to keep Kirk Cousins after 2 seasons, they could let him go for this small amount of money. And that's what the 49ers have done here, and that's the part I really like about this right here. After 2 seasons, if they don't like what's going on, right there, that's the key number, $4.2 million, they can let him go, they can start over. 2 seasons is well worth the investment of money and time to see if you've got a guy who can win for a very long time for the 49ers. All right, there's a lot more we can get into. We won't. If you like this kind of stuff and you want to dig deeper into it, I get a lot of it from Spot Track. Spot Track produces all these numbers. They produce even more numbers. There are deeper things you can get into with these contracts. Spot Track does a great job with it. Now, I've said this before, Spot Track is not the only place to get this information from. Other people produce this kind of information, but I prefer Spot Track. I just like their layout. I like the way they cover things. It seems to be very clear and concise, very organized, step by step. I really like the way they set it out. So if you want to see more of it, go to Spot Track. They can definitely help you out. Thanks to all the people who have subscribed lately. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the people who have watched the videos. If you have any comments or questions, be they good, bad, indifferent, hit us up in the comment box below the video. Thank you so much. This is Sports and Money. I'm Ben Parker. Have a great one. Bye.